So at the time of recording, we are right in the middle of Season 2 of All Out War, and I actually really like this event. I know it can be slightly controversial, people have a lot of mixed opinions on it, and the RTS game modes in general, but I do like it myself. There are, however, things I do think could be done to make it better for players, and that is what I'm going to go over in this video. I'm going to pose 10 things which I think could be improvements to this game mode. So first of all is the duration of it. So it lasts 28 days, I believe, almost a full month, and it's just a bit excessive. So you see here there's over 10 days left, but a little bit over 2 weeks into the event. But when I actually go onto my map, the Vanguard map, pretty much everyone is done with the event. No one who is in the bottom ranks is trying anymore. They've just accepted defeat. Most people who've been fighting consistently have full hospitals, or at the 7 mil hospital mark, where they have to heal to resend all 3 of their deployments. Same with me. You see here I have over 7 mil in my hospital, so if I want to send 3 full deployments with my army size, I consistently have to heal. And you can see in the right here, the healing costs are very high, so that's a big commitment to actually do that. And looking at the map, probably unsurprisingly to a lot of people, shadow up here, pink are depth, and they are controlling the majority of the map, and no one can really contest into them much. So perhaps that's somewhat specific to the Vanguard map, but from what I hear, this is quite a common trend where there's like a dominant force and most people can't fight into them after a certain point, particularly because of those healing costs like I showed there, because people are only going to keep healing if there's obviously something to get from those resources and speed ups and potentially Valyrian steel that they're putting into it. So if you get to a map state like this and you look at the rankings, like these bottom ranks just can't realistically catch up to these top ranks at this point. So we're now left with almost 2 weeks of people just not really doing anything. And the event itself is so non-stop, it's so 24/7, which is going to be something I'm going to touch on in some of the other suggestions, that I just think toning that down a bit would be healthy, because it's too much. The 24/7 nature of it in itself is too much, but when you have it 24/7 and then for such a prolonged period of time, I just don't think it's healthy for the player base or really necessary. So my suggestion here is reduce the duration to 16 days, which is quite a weird number to settle on. The reason I'm going to say 16 is these first 2 world progression stages each last 1 day. So 16 days as a total time for the event will be 2 days in your protected area, and then effectively 2 weeks steadily progressing into the rest of the map as more and more of the stages open to be declared upon through world progression. You will, of course, have to condense a lot of the timings of this, so everything would effectively have to open a bit earlier, just so everyone can get out on the map a bit quicker. So we're already past this 16-day point in this map right now, and even at this point, there's still multiple world progression stages of unlocked buildings which we still haven't gotten to. So I would cut the duration down to 16 days. And my second suggestion, which will somewhat play into that, is if you're going to cut down the duration of the event, you're going to have to speed up multiple things within the event to actually enable that. And the most bottlenecking thing in terms of time, in my experience, particularly if you have skirmishes and prolonged fights contesting over this stuff, and this is probably the most 24/7 element of All Out War, which I think should be scaled back a bit, is village rebuilding. So currently, villages require 1,080,000 points to be rebuilt, and it will be 10 of these points rebuilt every second per march inside. So even if you're getting up to like 100 marches in there, if you're going from scratch, it's still going to take quite a prolonged period of time. It's going to take like 30 minutes plus, no matter what you do. And when you look at some of these buildings and the amount of villages between them, so for example, down here, I remember when we were rebuilding these villages, to go from this building here, the large Blessing City 4, down to the medium industrial city 14, we had to fully rebuild 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 villages entirely to then be able to declare. And then if any of that gets interrupted in any way, your progress gets totally halted and you have to restart all over again. And you can find yourself in heavily contested instances of this, at least, just fighting over this stuff or sitting there for hours and hours and hours, logging in like every account you have access to just throw it into these villages. And it's so time consuming, even if you're not doing it yourself. If your faction is doing well, I pretty much guarantee you that you have at least 1 or 2 people who are going to very unhealthy lengths to speed up your village rebuilding processes. So as a simple fix, I would say let's just up the per march increase to 20 per march. So it'll be half the time required to rebuild villages. And I think that fits fairly decently with the reduced duration of the event itself also. Suggestion number 3 is going to be another village suggestion, the final one though, and it will be show visually on the map somehow a way of determining whether these villages are fully rebuilt or just flipped and in the process of being rebuilt. Because you see here, all of these villages just show the exact same. They're all red, whereas this is fully rebuilt and this is in the process of being rebuilt. And whilst these are both theoretically under the ownership of Scarlet Faction, these are very different functionalities because you can only declare from other or 2 other villages from fully rebuilt locations. So this would help players with knowing what villages are adjacent. Just quickly from a quick glance up here, you can of course sift through all of them, click on information if there's any awkward spacings, or go on the map and show villages and look at all the squares and whatnot. Fully rebuilt and non-rebuilt villages are very, very different. And I think a visual means of quickly determining that would be quite helpful. Suggestion number 4 is going to be related to vehicle production. So in the first season of the event, vehicles were significantly cheaper than they are this season to make. So, for example, these purple rally chariots, in the previous season, they only cost 12 million brass and 8 million silver. So the brass cost has gone up by 3 times and the silver cost by 6 times. And this is a very common trend throughout. And what I understand for every faction, silver specifically is in such high demand, and pretty much everyone is just totally broke on silver when it comes to sustaining their vehicle production, and particularly in the early stages of the event where you're really trying to push out rally chariots, you're trying to push out medics to everyone. Doing that at the same time as, say, pushing out these gold resource wagons to let people mine obsidian is just very hard to do all of them simultaneously, and it's very hard to keep on top of. So perhaps everything needs to be made somewhat cheaper if we're bringing the time and the duration of the event down a bit, but particularly the silver costs of vehicles, they need to be dramatically reduced in my opinion. I think obsidian should realistically be the bottleneck material for these highest quality vehicles out there, but currently it's silver, and I just don't really see the need for like silver being the most expensive resource here required for the medics, the most expensive resource here required for the rally chariots, the most expensive resource here required for the resource wagons. I mean, the silver costs need to very consistently be toned down just so the economy aspect of the event is a little less frustrating to players out there. And on the topic of resources too, I think there should be an addition of transporting resources to the faction quests. just like you have for vehicle production and gathering. And also in these rankings too, I think if you're going to have leaderboards for all these, you're of course going to want to have a leaderboard for any additions to faction quests too, because transporting resources is a very important part of this event actually. So all this grain that we have here in this warehouse is somewhat pointless. You can put it on medics and run out with that, but if you have, say, a fight going on in this military city, you're going to want grain in that warehouse over there. So if the city's being attacked, healers can get grain from that warehouse in closer proximity and heal in the fight, so people can heal at the municipal center directly and also just deploy from the barracks there also. And of course, the travel time from here to here, if you're running, say, like Inf, is like 15 minutes, depending on your marching speed, obviously. So it's a very thankless task, but it's very, very important. So I do think incentivizing it could be a good addition. And yes, potentially it could be exploited by people trying to get their daily points quickly and they just do nonsense transports. But for example, I put a marker down here where we just ask people to rebuild this village closest to our home base and we just continuously disband it over and over again so people can get their daily points a bit easier. So it will be no different to stuff like that, and those sorts of things still exist in the current way things work anyway. But with the state of how the economy system works in All Out War, all the brass and silver and obsidian that you have anywhere except your home base, unless you're doing constructions on buildings you're defending, is pointless, and you want all of that transported back here into this warehouse, and you're going to want grain transported out of your base to more relevant positions too. So any incentivizing transporting to make players do that more willingly would be a positive change in my opinion. And for the sixth suggestion, it's going to move over to dragon domains. So the dragon domains as a concept, I think, was a very interesting addition. So it's sort of like MMORPG raids where you fight against NPCs and they have damaging effects that you need to run out of. They have special effects, like for example, the second boss, he'll add sort of thorns onto his armor as a visual effect, and you're going to want to stop attacking him when he does that, since you'll deal huge amounts of damage to yourself as like a reflect mechanic. So I do like it as a concept. Unfortunately, with how it currently works, there is a protective barrier around the entrances of these zones, and no one can enter through these until a 10-hour declaration is finished. And then after that 10 hours passes, you can then enter through this and kill all the NPCs and try and defeat the end boss for rewards. But currently, with the current system, anyone can enter here. So what's happened here on the Vanguard map, at least, is I think the first time these were declared for, I believe one faction did it totally free, but then we were, I believe, the second to declare, and we all grouped up over here. We all ran in. We started killing the first boss, but we quickly found that out here we had multiple other factions just running in, killing everyone that tried to get in themselves and help. And then eventually they realized they could get through the barrier as well, and they came in here and just slaughtered anyone who was trying to kill the boss, until the point that we were just totally wiped when actually fighting into the third boss. And in response to that, then another faction went to do the exact same in retaliation to the people that gate crashed ours, and now pretty much no one on this map can do their dragon domain without intervention of some form from other alliances, either helping them or attacking them to prevent them doing these dragon domains. So for the health and the initial intention of these dragon domains, I think only the alliance that declared on them should be allowed to enter that protected area. Potentially, I think it should be easier to get in than it currently is also, because even if you did that, people could just sit with rallies like outside of your protected area and just slaughter anyone walking down. So I'd maybe change the pathing of this entrance slightly, maybe off this gate instead. You could have it shoot down here or something, just slightly more protected than it currently is over here. And I think the difficulty probably needs to be toned down a decent chunk as well, because currently it's very, very difficult. And unless you're one of the top alliances on this map at least, or you have external help from other alliances, it's very hard to even do the third boss on the lowest difficulty, let alone these higher difficulties. And that comes into my seventh suggestion, which will be related to this Passing the Green Dream photo chest. I think this should be available in the contribution point shop so people can get it a bit easier. Because currently, particularly with the way you have to kill the boss on normal and then on expert, and to then be able to do it on epic, and then be able to even have a chance of getting this limited kill time reward. This photo shard is exceedingly hard to complete the album of. I mean, if you're not getting that, even with the current duration of the event, it's literally impossible to complete this photo chest or this photo shard. And if this event is going to be as infrequent as it has been currently, where it's like once a year, I feel like that's fairly unnecessary. So I'd add another means of obtaining this. And the simplest way of doing that is just adding it into this contribution shop alongside the unsullied photos as well. And for the eighth suggestion, it's going to be related to these twin dragon guards. Currently, there is a lot of complaints about them being very hard to find, particularly if people are trying to only kill the highest level available of them. So say you're trying to kill level 8s. If we look around this city, they tend to spawn in greater numbers around city walls. So there's only one that we can see right now. Still just one. Rest are slightly lower levels. So yeah, there's one max level Twin Dragon Guard around this city. If you went here and killed this, it would then, I believe, spawn somewhere else on the map, as if there's like a limited amount that can be on the map at any given time, which as a system is somewhat fine, but trying to find them, given how big this map is very, very hard. So I'd both increase the number of these on the map, or the spawn rates, or both, but I'd also add here above this rally button a search function, similar to what we have for rebel leaders and gathering nodes and rebel camps in the world map, or even rebel groups with their previous system. And I'd allow players to search for these with a little slider where you can select the level. So you just click it, and then you click Twin Dragon Guards, and then you slide it to the max level, to level 8, and you click it, and it will bring you to the coordinates of the nearest one. And then you can run over to it, and you can kill it, and then you can repeat that process, and of course empty all your dragon blood through that. Because currently, particularly when there's world progression stages linked to killing these, it's just far too difficult to track these down, and that difficulty effectively just makes people not even bother, because it is so time consuming for rewards that are not worth that amount of time required, so players just don't even bother with it, so, which sort of defeats the purpose of it, obviously. So a search function, I think, would alleviate those issues a lot. For the ninth suggestion, I think there needs to be some interactivity added to these hot springs when they open. Obviously, the time these unlock will have to be scaled back if we go with my first suggestion of reducing the time of the event, because currently these have opened so late. So I would have them open fairly quickly, and through that be an earlier contest point where people can fight to have control over them or hunt people that are using them for the coin income. Currently, all these do is you stand in it and you gain 20 coins for the contribution shop every 30 seconds per march you put in there. So you put all 3 marches in there and you get 60 coins every 30 seconds, and it only lasts 30 minutes, and it opens for those 30 minutes after a period of time which causes it to spread across different time zones. So I think something needs to be added here to just make it more interesting. I think a good start would be similar to the dragon domains where as you run to the boss, there's all these NPCs similar to these twin dragon guards, which you have to kill to unlock the boss itself. I think you could quite easily have a similar system to that with these. So even if it's not hugely PvP based, you could lean into that NPC fighting element a bit and maybe surround this area with max level twin dragon guards, for example. This would help players empty their dragon blood in efficient ways like they want to. It would give them something to do rather than just standing here for 30 minutes doing absolutely nothing. And you could potentially gate the coins you gain by needing to kill, say, 3 of these NPCs to actually be able to gain these in those 30 minutes, or potentially you could just add a multiplier to it, again, similar to those NPCs in the Dragon Domains, where, say, up to a maximum of 10, you will gain 10% additional coins per march for each of these NPCs that you help kill. And you can maybe rebalance the numbers of the coins you get to account for that. Maybe you could drop it from 20 as a base per march to 15, and then if you get the max buffs, it goes up to 30 per march, or something like that. Just something to make these 30 minutes you're standing in this hot spring less mind-numbing than it currently is. And finally, my 10th suggestion is going to be the elimination rewards. I think the healing rewards is actually fine. So previously there wasn't a healing and elimination rewards spanning across the entire event. With this season of the event, it's been scaled into a weekly refreshing set of quests. And what you find is it's pretty much entirely unobtainable for 99% of players to actually reach these max elimination rewards. So the max elimination rewards you can see there is 80 million in 1 week from Monday to Monday. If we look at my faction's ranking, so our faction's second on the Vanguard map, and then we look at, even my own elimination points here on my main account, I've barely gone past 80 million myself, and I'm well in the top 100 of this whole map, where there's, 1,600 players in total, and I'm barely past this point. And this refreshes weekly, remember, and there's 4 weeks in this event currently. And if we look at my faction eliminations, you can see that all these players down here aren't even getting close to getting those top elimination ranks. So I would scale these numbers down just a bit. I'd honestly just halve them, at least. I think that's probably a healthier place to put out. Just halve every single one of these numbers. Because the rewards aren't crazy. Yes, 2 days of healing speeds and 100 reforge ore is decent, but 28 million elam's decent? Definitely not. So I think all of these could be halved, and I think you could make them a lot more obtainable for the majority of players out there. It could potentially even be reduced by 3 or 4 times, but maybe that's a bit too drastic a change. So those are my 10 suggestions. I'm sure there's things I've just forgot and overlooked in the making of this video, so if you have any ideas which you think would be good, which I've just totally missed over, feel free to post that in the comments also. I know this event is fairly controversial. There's a real love-hate relationship with it for a lot of players, but I do think there's something that could be made really great out of this event. In my experience over the 2 seasons, it's very good at building inter-alliance relationships. So the first season, I was in WTF and we had HOH. I ended up joining HOH between seasons purely from relationships built through that. And this season we got matched with NFI. And again, there was pretty much no relationship there between the 2 alliances as far as I know. But everyone's got along so well, working together towards doing the best they can, obviously. And I think that part of the event really plays into the main reason why pretty much all of us are playing this game, which is the community element. I think it gives a platform to create those relationships and build those relationships, particularly as you're working with other factions as well. And beyond that, it causes a lot of drama, obviously, and negative relationships, which, whilst I am very averse to drama and stuff like that myself, I know a lot of people crave that, and it does keep parts of the game interesting in itself too. There we go. Those are my 10 suggestions of what I would change in All Out War.